In the heart of Seoul, where the dazzling city lights painted the night sky, stood La Ciel, a premier restaurant in Cheongdam-dong. Through its grand floor-to-ceiling windows, the nocturnal view of the Han River unfolded like a masterpiece. Inside, the soft murmur of classical music blended with the low hum of conversation. Underneath a sparkling crystal chandelier, each table, draped in a pristine white cloth, was adorned with fine wine and exquisite cuisine. This was a space for the successful, and tonight, Han Seo-yeon felt as though she stood at the pinnacle of that success. Seated across from her was her fiancé, Choi Min-jun. As the only son of director Choi of the Yoon-sung Group and the company's brilliant head of strategic planning, his towering height, refined looks, and confident demeanor were a testament to why he was the object of so many women's envy. Simply sitting beside him, Seo-yeon felt herself illuminated. Their engagement was the culmination of a 3-year romance, and the wedding was now just a month away. Tonight was a crucial dinner to finalize the wedding plans with both sets of parents. Seo-yeon's parents, from an ordinary middle-class background, seemed slightly out of place in such a luxurious setting, but they smiled warmly for the sake of their daughter's happy future. Seo-yeon, you chose a magnificent dress. Our daughter-in-law is even more beautiful than I imagined, Min-jun's mother said, elegantly raising her wine glass. Her voice was full of satisfaction, yet Seo-yeon could not miss the subtle glint of disdain in her eyes, a look that evaluated her as if she were a piece of expensive jewelry. Thank you, mother. You just have impeccable taste. Seo-yeon forced a smile, a response she had grown accustomed to over the past 3 years. An unbridgeable chasm separated Min-jun's family from her own. To cross that river, she had to constantly humble herself and conceal her true feelings. But she loved Min-jun, and she believed she could endure it all for him. Min-jun, however, seemed oblivious to her efforts, nonchalantly cutting his steak. He was unusually quiet tonight. His silence made her uneasy, but she didn't want to ruin this important evening. So she said nothing. As the meal neared its end, Min-jun finally spoke. He placed his knife and fork down with a sharp clatter. The sudden noise drew everyone's attention to him. I have something to say. His voice was as cold as ice. The atmosphere instantly turned frigid. Seo-yeon's heart began to pound with a sense of dread. Min-jun looked directly at Seo-yeon. There was no love or affection in his eyes anymore. Only cold contempt and ridicule. Han Seo-yeon, let's call off this wedding. What, Min-jun? What are you talking about? Seo-yeon's voice trembled. Her parents' faces turned pale, and even Min-jun's parents looked visibly taken aback. What are you saying, Min-jun? What's this nonsense? His father shouted in anger. But Min-jun ignored him. He stood up, looked down at Seo-yeon, and sneered. It's not nonsense, father. I can no longer envision a future with this woman. She's simply not on my level. The single word pierced Seo-yeon's chest like a dagger. It was the same word that had tormented her for the past 3 years. Choi Min-jun, what are you doing? We were supposed to… Don't fool yourself. Han Seo-yeon. Did you actually think I loved you? I just met you because you were a sufficiently submissive woman who would be grateful for my family background. But now, even that has become tiresome. Look at your parents. Can't you see how embarrassing it is? How they squirm in a place like this? Min-jun's cruel words continued. The other patrons of the restaurant began to whisper. All eyes were on her, filled with pity or the morbid curiosity of an entertaining spectacle. Seo-yeon felt as if all the blood was draining from her body. Honey, that's enough. Seo-yeon's father stood up abruptly and yelled, his face red with fury. How dare you do this to my daughter? Are you even a human being? I am a human being. Just a realistic one. Father. Oh, I suppose I won't be calling you father anymore. What use is Seo-yeon's family to mine? They're nothing but a burden. Min-jun pulled an envelope from his jacket and tossed it onto the table. This is compensation. It's more money than your family could ever earn in a lifetime. Let's end this cleanly. Seo-yeon stared blankly at the thick envelope on the table. Money. Their relationship. It seemed, had begun and ended with money. 3 years of her devotion and love could be replaced by a few sheets of paper. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Her body trembled with humiliation and contempt. She raised her head and glared at Min-jun. How could you do this to me? Why couldn't I, a woman with better prospects, has appeared? The daughter of Yoon-sung Construction. She's incomparable to you. So now, just get out of my life. With those final words, Minjun turned and walked out of the restaurant without a backward glance. His parents bowed repeatedly to Seo-yeon's parents, but even their gestures felt like a charade. Her world was collapsing. She couldn't hear a thing, the whispers of people. Her parents' worried voices, everything felt distant. Stumbling, she got up and ran out of the restaurant. The cold night air pierced her lungs. A chilling rain began to pour. Her expensive dress clung to her body, soaked through, but she didn't care. She just walked and walked. Without knowing where she was going, she wandered aimlessly in the rain. Minjun's cruel words echoed in her ears. Not on my level. Embarrassing. Get out of my life. The love she believed in, the future she had dreamed of, it was all shattered in an instant. She felt like the most miserable woman in the world. She didn't know how long she'd been walking. Just as her legs were about to give out, she saw a man taking shelter from the rain under the eaves of a bus stop. He was dressed in work clothes, mud-stained safety boots, a worn-out vest, and calloused hands. He looked every bit the weary construction worker at the end of a long day. The man was quietly watching the downpour. His profile seemed lonely, yet as solid as a rock. He appeared more genuine than any of the men she had met in that fancy restaurant. Seo-yeon felt drawn to him and approached. Rain and tears mixed on her face. The man sensed her presence and turned to face her. His eyes were deep and calm, holding neither pity nor curiosity. He simply looked at her. In that moment, an impulsive thought flashed through Seo-yeon's mind. She wanted to ruin everything. She wanted to mock the very level that Choi Min-jun had so despised. Now that she had fallen so far, a fierce defiance surged within her, telling her there was nothing left to lose. She opened her trembling lips. "Excuse me." The man's gaze was now fully on her. Will you marry me?" The words were so unbelievable she could hardly believe she'd said them. But they were out. The man was silent for a moment. He quietly studied her desperate, rain-soaked face. His eyes seemed to flicker with a hint of something unreadable. Silence hung between them, filled only by the sound of the rain. Seo-yeon realized how foolish she must sound and gave a self-deprecating smile. To propose to a complete stranger, looking like this, she must have lost her mind. Just as she lowered her head and began to turn away, the man's low voice broke the quiet. "I will. Let's get married. You and I." His answer was short and resolute. There was no hesitation, no doubt, as if he had been waiting a long time to say those very words. And so, on the most glamorous night of her life, a night that had fallen into utter ruin, Han Seo-yeon made a lifelong promise to a construction worker whose name and age she didn't even know. It was the most reckless decision made in the depths of despair and the beginning of a storm that would completely change her life. The next morning, Seo-yeon awoke to an unfamiliar ceiling. A terrible hangover brought back fragmented memories of the night before Choi Min-jun's cold face, the pouring rain, and the absurd promise to a stranger. She sat up in a panic. She was in a small, cheap business hotel room. The man had brought her here, and then, without a word, he had placed his ID card on the table and disappeared. The worn ID card on the table had the name Kang Ji-hoon and a social security number. Seo-yeon stared blankly at the name, Kang Ji-hoon. It was the only proof that the impulsive promise of last night wasn't a dream. Regret and self-loathing washed over her. "You're crazy, Han Seo-yeon. You weren't in your right mind." But the deed was done. She wanted revenge on Choi Min-jun. By choosing the low-level life he so despised, she wanted to wound his arrogant pride. This wasn't a rational decision. It was a purely self-destructive choice born of defiance and fury. Seo-yeon called Kang Ji-hoon. His voice was still gruff and his answer short. "I'll meet you at the district office today." Kang Ji-hoon, who appeared at the appointed time, was wearing the same work clothes as the night before. He gave a quick glance at Seo-yeon's face and, without a word, walked into the office. Throughout the entire process of filling out the marriage registration form, the two of them didn't exchange a single word. Seo-yeon mechanically filled in her personal details when she wrote Kang Ji-hoon in the spouse section. A bitter laugh escaped her. Just a few days ago, Choi Min-jun was supposed to have been written there. The clerk confirmed their IDs and stamped the registration form. "Congratulations. You are now legally a married couple." The clerk's perfunctory blessing sounded like the most ironic words in the world. Just like that, Han Seo-yeon and Kang Ji-hoon became husband and wife in less than 24 hours after meeting. Their new home was a small rooftop room in a dilapidated multi-unit building on the outskirts of Seoul. After climbing a steep flight of stairs, she opened the door to a cramped space filled with a musty smell, the worn-out floor, walls with peeling wallpaper, and a creaking sink. It was a world away from the luxurious Gangnam penthouse apartment she was supposed to share with Choi Min-jun. "Is this all your luggage?" Ji-hoon asked, looking at her small suitcase. Seo-yeon nodded. After the breakup, she had thrown away everything Min-jun had bought her, leaving with only the bare necessities. "There's only one room, so you can have it. I'll sleep in the living room," Ji-hoon said, laying a blanket on the old sofa. Seo-yeon couldn't say anything. Their strange marriage had gotten off to a shaky start. They were in the same space, but an invisible wall separated them. From the next day on, Ji-hoon left for the construction site at dawn. Seo-yeon ate the steaming rice and simple soup he had left for her. In the evenings, Ji-hoon would return, exhausted and covered in dust and sweat. He was a man of few words, but he never forgot to prepare dinner for Seo-yeon. A rough kimchi stew, a clumsily made rolled omelet. The food wasn't much to look at, but it strangely felt warm. Meanwhile, her life at the company was pure hell. The rumor that she had been dumped and married to a nobody had spread throughout the office. Her colleagues openly avoided her or whispered behind her back. "Did you hear Han Seo-yeon married a construction worker? Oh my god. Really, the shock from being dumped by director Choi must have been too much. She's completely given up on life." I know, right. To think such a smart and successful person would end up like this. Pity, mockery, and contemptuous glances flew at her from all directions. Seo-yeon tried to pretend it didn't bother her and buried herself in work. But the hardest thing to endure was Choi Min-jun's presence. Every time they passed in the hallway, he would ostentatiously display affection with his new fiancée or make sarcastic remarks. One afternoon, Seo-yeon was making coffee in the break room when Choi Min-jun came in. He crossed his arms and sneered, looking her up and down. "You're a mess, Han Seo-yeon. I heard you've set up your new life in a rooftop room, and your husband works manual labor every day. It paints a lovely picture." Seo-yeon clenched her fists. Her nails dug into her palms. "It's none of your business. Director Choi, why isn't it the woman who was once mine has fallen so low? It's embarrassing. Can your husband, a man who lives paycheck to paycheck, even afford your designer handbags?" "That's something I'll handle." "You'll handle it. How with your own abilities have you forgotten? The only reason you have your current position is because of me. Without me, you'd still be organizing blueprints." Min-jun's words weren't entirely wrong. His help as her boyfriend had been a major factor in her early success at the company, but that didn't invalidate her own skills. "I got to where I am with my own abilities. Don't delude yourself." "Abilities? Fine. Let's see just how great your abilities are." Min-jun smirked and threw a stack of documents at her. "Take on the Mountain View project. You know, everyone else gave up on it, right? I'll give you a week. If you can't deliver a decent result, admit your skills are lacking and crawl out of this company. So, can you do it?" The Mountain View project. It was Eunsun Group's biggest headache, a project that had been stalled for years due to complex terrain and difficult licensing issues. No one wanted to touch it. He was openly humiliating her and creating an excuse to fire her. Everyone thought she would fail. But Seo-yeon's eyes burned with a newfound determination. This was an opportunity. A perfect chance to prove her worth without Choi Min-jun's help and make him eat his words. "I will," Seo-yeon answered without hesitation. Her resolute attitude seemed to surprise him a little. That night, Seo-yeon stayed up all night, buried in project documents. For days, she barely went home, snatching sleep at the office. Her head throbbed and her eyes felt gritty, but she couldn't stop. Then, one early morning, as she dragged her exhausted body back to the rooftop room, she found Ji-hoon curled up and asleep on the living room sofa. A cooled bowl of soup and rice sat untouched beside him. He had clearly waited up for her. Seo-yeon quietly approached and pulled a blanket over him. His hands, calloused from hard labor, his face tired from sleep. Who was this man? Why had he married her without asking a single question? She suddenly found herself curious. At that moment, Ji-hoon stirred in his sleep and grabbed her wrist. Seo-yeon gasped, holding her breath. Ji-hoon slowly opened his eyes. His gaze, still clouded by sleep, seemed softer than usual. "Oh, you're back." His voice was low and husky. He didn't let go of her hand, just quietly looked at her tired face. "Don't push yourself too hard." His simple words made Seo-yeon's eyes well up with tears. It was as if all the sorrow she had held inside the pain of the broken engagement, the humiliation at work, the unspoken suffering was finally bursting forth. It was the first time a crack had appeared in her steel-like resolve. Staring at her wrist, still warm from his touch, Seo-yeon was overcome by a whirlwind of emotions. His simple words of comfort seemed to melt away all the tension and sorrow that had built up over the past few days. She hastily pulled her hand away and retreated to her room. But her heart was pounding. This strange cohabitation, this mysterious husband, everything was confusing. But she knew this was no time for sentiment. The Mountain View Project. A massive mountain still stood before her. The next day, Seo-yeon plunged even deeper into the project. There was a reason the Mountain View Project had been abandoned for so many years. The site was located on a steep, unstable hillside, making large-scale construction difficult. To make matters worse, part of the site overlapped with an environmental protection zone, subjecting it to numerous legal regulations. Previous design teams had repeatedly failed to solve these issues. For days and nights, Seo-yeon reviewed hundreds of topographical maps and legal documents. She racked her brain for new ideas, but kept hitting dead ends. Time was running out, and Minjun's deadline was looming. Her lips felt parched from anxiety. That evening, Seo-yeon was hunched over her documents, a deep frown on her face. As usual, Ji-hoon had made dinner and was quietly watching TV. The news was a lively discussion about complex real estate policies. "This is crazy. Why are these height restrictions so complicated?" Seo-yeon exclaimed in frustration without even realizing it. Without taking his eyes off the TV, Ji-hoon casually said, "Didn't that law have a special provision that was revised last year? It gives some relief from regulations if the building is certified as eco-friendly." "What?" Seo-yeon looked up in surprise. Was there such a provision? She immediately looked up the relevant laws. To her amazement, Ji-hoon was right. It was a minor, detailed clause that most people overlooked, but it was a potential breakthrough for this project. How did you know that?" Seo-yeon couldn't hide her surprise. Ji-hoon, still watching TV, answered calmly, "I just saw it on the news. They talk about that kind of thing a lot these days." A construction worker who watches economic news debates and remembers complex legal provisions, Seo-yeon was baffled. It was too perfect to be a coincidence. A seed of suspicion was planted in her mind. A few days later, Seo-yeon faced another major hurdle, analyzing profitability to prove the project's viability. She stayed up all night creating financial models, but the results were abysmal. No matter how she calculated it, the expected profit margin was far too low to pass the board's criteria. She slumped over her desk in despair and fell asleep. When she opened her eyes to the faint morning light, she saw a small memo note beside her laptop. It was written in a concise but powerful handwriting. "Change land use plan, reduce commercial facilities, and increase luxury residential units. Instead of a low initial sale price, shift to a model that emphasizes long-term asset value appreciation." It felt as if she had been hit by a hammer. Why hadn't she thought of this? The original plan was too focused on short-term profits, diminishing the project's potential value. The memo's proposal would increase initial investment costs, but promise significantly higher returns in the long run. This was a revolutionary idea that changed the entire paradigm of the project. Not just a few numbers. Seo-yeon picked up the memo with trembling hands. The handwriting? It was undeniably Kang Ji-hoon's. That evening, as soon as Ji-hoon returned, Seo-yeon confronted him with the memo. You wrote this, didn't you? What is going on?" Ji-hoon looked flustered for a moment, but then his usual expressionless face returned. "Oh, you looked so stressed last night. I remembered a business expert on TV talking about something similar. I just thought it might help." He was using the TV excuse again. Seo-yeon was dumbfounded. How could he possibly come up with such a professional financial strategy just by watching TV? This wasn't about knowledge. It required market insight and bold decision-making. Ji-hoon, please, tell me the truth. Who are you, really?" Her voice was edged with suspicion. Ji-hoon avoided her gaze and answered briefly, "I told you. I'm just a man who works at a construction site." He walked into the bathroom, signaling that the conversation was over. Seo-yeon watched him go, sinking into a state of deep confusion. He was clearly hiding something. Her suspicion about his true identity was now almost a certainty. Then, one night, as Seo-yeon was putting the final touches on her presentation, Ji-hoon's phone rang. He went up to the rooftop to take the call, as he usually did. Casually glancing out the window, Seo-yeon caught fragments of his voice on the wind. Proceed with the acquisition as planned. Have you secured the list of board members? Keep a close eye on Director Choi's cash flow. Be prepared for a hostile takeover. Acquisition, board members, hostile takeover. Seo-yeon couldn't believe her ears. Those weren't the words of a construction worker. What was more, his tone was completely different from his usual self, a cold, authoritative voice, as if giving orders. A moment later, the rooftop door opened and Ji-hoon came in. He was the quiet, ordinary Kang Ji-hoon again, as if nothing had happened. It's late. Do you want something to eat? Seo-yeon couldn't answer. She could only stare at the man in front of her. She couldn't reconcile the man in worn-out work clothes, asking about dinner, with the man who had just coldly discussed the fate of a major corporation. Amidst the suspicion and confusion, one thing was clear. Kang Ji-hoon had not appeared in her life by chance. And thanks to his advice, she now held a powerful weapon to use against Choi Min-jun. Seo-yeon finally completed her presentation materials. It was a bold and innovative plan that surpassed all previous designs. She looked at the finished renderings on the monitor, then at Ji-hoon, who was quietly reading a newspaper. This mysterious man had made it all possible. On the day of reckoning, she had a premonition that not only her fate but also his secret would be revealed. The morning of the decisive day dawned. Seo-yeon hadn't slept a wink, but her mind was crystal clear. She put on her most professional and elegant business suit. The woman reflected in the mirror was no longer the one who had been abandoned by Choi Min-jun and fallen into despair. Her eyes held a determined will, and her expression was filled with quiet confidence. When she stepped into the living room, Ji-hoon was waiting for her, having already set the breakfast table. Warm rice and bean sprout soup. It was a simple meal, but it felt more reassuring than any feast. Do well. Ji-hoon's simple words conveyed a deep, unwavering trust. She nodded and left the house. The large conference room at Yunsun Group's headquarters was filled with palpable tension. The chairman and all the key executives were present. Choi Min-jun sat beside his father, a relaxed smile on his face as he watched Seo-yeon. His eyes were full of mockery, as if to say, "Go on, try to squirm your way out of this." The other executives were also uninterested, with the project's failure already a foregone conclusion. Seo-yeon stood firm at the podium. She took a deep breath and began her presentation. I will now present the new development plan for the Mountain View project. Her voice, unwavering, echoed through the conference room. Based on Ji-hoon's advice, Seo-yeon meticulously laid out the project's new blueprint, the easing of regulations through eco-friendly certification, the paradigm shift toward a luxury residential complex, and an innovative financial model to maximize long-term asset value. As her presentation progressed, the atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. The executives, who had seemed so bored, now had a glint in their eyes, and sounds of admiration could be heard. Min-jun's smirk disappeared, replaced by a look of shock and annoyance. When her presentation concluded, Min-jun raised his hand as if he had been waiting for this moment. He gave a signal to the head of the technical development team with a nod of his chin. Han Seo-yeon, the plan is very plausible, but I think you've left out the most important part. The technical director, a close associate of Min-jun, began with a sneer. The greatest issue with the site is its unstable ground. The existing construction methods would require an astronomical amount of time and money to ensure stability. Do you have a concrete solution for that? Or is this just a pretty drawing with nothing substantial behind it? It was a sharp, incisive question, the project's Achilles heel. The one thing Seo-yeon hadn't fully resolved on her own. All eyes turned to her. A triumphant smile returned to Min-jun's face. For a moment, Seo-yeon's mind went blank. Her heart sank. Then, a memory flashed in her mind. The night before her presentation, exhausted and slumped over her desk, and Ji-hoon's casual remark while reading the newspaper, "Technology is so advanced now, they build on unstable ground all the time. I saw a documentary about it. There's a method where they drive steel pillars deep into the ground in a spiral shape. I think they called them helical piles. At the time, she was too tired to pay attention, but now, in this do-or-die moment, the phrase felt like a lifeline. Helical piles. It was the latest technology optimized for soft ground, a method that would drastically reduce noise and vibration, as well as significantly shorten the construction period and cost compared to traditional methods. The light returned to Seo-yeon's eyes. She looked directly at the technical director and answered with confidence. Thank you for the question, Director. Of course. We have a solution for that. We plan to apply the helical pile method. The room buzzed. Helical pile was a new technology not yet widely adopted in South Korea. The technical director's face stiffened. The helical pile method ensures excellent stability on soft ground, reduces construction costs by over 30% compared to traditional pile methods, and cuts the construction period in half. It will play a crucial role in maximizing the project's profitability. Seo Yeon explained the advantages of the method and her plan for its application without a hitch. The technical director had no counter-arguments. A satisfied smile finally appeared on the chairman's face. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Proceed with this plan immediately, Han Seo Yeon. I'm appointing you the overall project manager. The result was a resounding success. Seo Yeon returned to her seat to a round of applause. Choi Min-jun could only glare at her, his face contorted with fury and humiliation. That evening, Seo Yeon stopped by a grocery store on her way home. She filled her cart with fresh meat and vegetables she had never bought before. When she arrived at the rooftop room, Ji-hoon had just returned from work. I'll make dinner tonight, Seo Yeon said first. Ji-hoon seemed surprised, but nodded. Seo Yeon, though clumsy, prepared dinner with great care. The savory smell of a bubbling soybean paste stew and perfectly browned meat filled the small room. For the first time, they sat across from each other and ate a proper meal. An awkward silence hung in the air, but it was no longer uncomfortable. Instead, a warm, peaceful atmosphere enveloped them. After the meal, Seo Yeon handed Ji-hoon a cup of tea and cautiously began to speak. Thank you. Tonight, it was all because of you. Ji-hoon quietly drank his tea. If it weren't for you, I would have completely fallen apart tonight. The legal provision, the financial model, and the helical pile method. It's too strange to be a coincidence. Seo Yeon looked him directly in the eyes. She was no longer avoiding him. I'll ask you again. Kang Ji-hoon, who are you? Really? This time, her voice was filled with genuine curiosity, not suspicion. Ji-hoon placed his teacup down and smiled faintly. It was the first soft smile she'd ever seen on his face. I am your husband. He still hadn't revealed his secret, but Seo Yeon no longer pushed him. For some reason, his answer warmed her heart. Their marriage of convenience was changing, a subtle trust and a gentle affection, rather than a cold transaction, were beginning to blossom between them. After becoming the head of the Mountain View project, Seo Yeon's standing at the company changed overnight. Her colleagues who had once ignored and mocked her now respectfully called her team leader. The chairman, too, showed his full confidence in her by frequently calling her in for project updates. While Seo Yeon had the opportunity to display her talents, a part of her heart remained heavy. All of her success was because of her mysterious husband, Kang Ji-hoon, whose true identity she still didn't know. The more she tried to uncover his secret, the deeper he retreated into silence. Seo Yeon decided to stop asking and began to observe him instead. He still went to the construction site at dawn and returned exhausted in the evenings. But there was a dignity and intelligence in his every move that was hard to believe came from a regular laborer. The way he read the newspaper, the sharp look in his eyes when watching the news, and the deep insight in his occasional remarks, it was as if he was only showing her the tip of a massive iceberg. Then one night, an invitation to the Yunsung Group's anniversary gala arrived from the company. It was the biggest and most glamorous event of the year, attended by all executives and key business partners. As the project manager, Seo Yeon's attendance was mandatory. The problem was the phrase, +1. Seo Yeon hesitated for days. She couldn't possibly take Ji-hoon, a man in mud-stained work clothes, to such a lavish party. It would clearly make him uncomfortable, and more than that, it would make them easy targets for mockery by Choi Min-jun and his cronies. But attending alone felt disrespectful to her legal husband. There's a company party this weekend. Seo Yeon began, a bit hesitantly. Ji-hoon looked up from his newspaper. Would you come with me? Ji-hoon was silent for a moment. Seo Yeon expected him to refuse, but to her surprise, he calmly nodded. I will. What time should I be there? On the day of the party, Seo Yeon wore an elegant navy dress she had splurged on. Her hair and makeup were done by a professional. She felt both unfamiliar and satisfied with her reflection. But when she saw Ji-hoon, her satisfaction quickly turned to anxiety. He was still in his worn-out work clothes. Are you going to wear that? Yes, These are the most comfortable clothes I own. Seo-yeon sighed. There was nothing she could do. She forced a smile and linked her arm through his. The hotel ballroom where the party was held was a battlefield of stars. Under the magnificent chandeliers, titans of South Korean business gathered in small groups. The moment Seo-yeon and Ji-hoon entered, the noise seemed to stop. Hundreds of eyes turned to them. Amidst the sea of expensive dresses and tuxedos, Ji-hoon in his mud-stained work clothes was a jarring sight. Isn't that team leader Han's husband? Oh my God, she actually brought a construction worker. Is she crazy? Director Choi was right to break up with her. The difference in their levels is just too great. Whispers of mockery and disdain came from all sides. Seo-yeon's face flushed with shame, and she couldn't bring herself to look up. But Ji-hoon seemed completely oblivious to their stares, calmly making his way to the buffet table and filling his plate. Just then, Choi Min-jun and his new fiancée, the daughter of Yusung Construction, approached them, dressed in head-to-toe designer clothes. He looked at Ji-hoon with unconcealed contempt. Han Seo-yeon, no matter how successful you become, you can't escape your level. How could you even think of bringing a man like this to a place like this? He's a disgrace to Yunsun Group. Choi Min-jun, don't you dare talk like that. This is my husband. Seo-yeon retorted angrily, but Min-jun just laughed. Your husband? Ha! How dare a man in work clothes come here? Listen, this place isn't for people like you. Why don't you just eat your fill and leave? I'll pay for your food. His words were an open humiliation. The surrounding crowd watched with morbid fascination. Seo-yeon felt tears sting her eyes from the shame. At that moment, a low, dignified voice cut through the air. What is all this commotion? It was the chairman of Yunsun Group. He approached with a look of displeasure. But his gaze wasn't on Choi Min-jun. It was on Ji-hoon. Who are you, causing a scene here? Everyone's attention was now on Ji-hoon. He was chewing a mouthful of food, and he looked at the chairman without any fear. Just a passerby? At his calm reply, Choi Min-jun was dumbfounded. Father, this man is Han Seo-yeon's husband. As you can see, he's just a common laborer. Call security immediately. Ji-hoon walked straight to the boardroom on the top floor, with no one daring to stop him. The moment he entered, all the noise in the meeting room ceased. The small and now worn rooftop room was replaced by a luxurious penthouse overlooking the Han River. But the emotional distance between them only grew with the bigger space. Seo-yeon felt as if the opulent new home Ji-hoon had given her was a gilded cage. She didn't want to accept anything from him and tried her best to avoid him. She would wake up after he had left for work in the morning and only come out of her room after he was asleep at night. I have an idea. We can use the Mountain View Project blueprints. Ji-hoon silently endured her coldness. He decided to give her time. He thought it was best to wait until she was ready to open her heart. Every morning, he would prepare a breakfast made by a top chef before leaving for work. And he would quietly place the latest architecture books he thought she would like in her study. But Seo-yeon didn't touch any of it. Choi Min-jun and his father froze, as if they had seen a ghost. After days of this Cold War, Ji-hoon went to Seo-yeon's study one late night and found her still working. In his hand was a thick stack of documents. As if nothing had happened, he calmly walked out of the ballroom, leaving hundreds of people in a state of shock and disbelief. I need to ask a favor of you, Ms. Han Seo-yeon. How are you here? He didn't call her wife or Seo-yeon. He called her Ms. Han Seo-yeon. A professional tone. Seo-yeon looked at him with wary eyes. The blueprints. What about them? I'm not asking as your husband, but as the chairman of the TK group. I need your help. Min-jun stammered. Ji-hoon laid the documents on the desk in front of her. It was Yunsun Group's internal audit data. Ji-hoon finished chewing a piece of steak on his plate and answered as if bothered. The corruption of Min-jun and his father was just the tip of the iceberg. Yunsun Group was rotten to the core. Decades of slush funds, embezzlement through shell projects, illegal lobbying. If we leave it like this, the company will go under, and thousands of innocent employees will lose their jobs. Kang Ji-hoon slowly surveyed the meeting table. The executives he met eyes with involuntarily flinched. He finally stopped in front of the Yunsun Group chairman, who was seated at the head of the table. His voice was serious and heavy. Those blueprints are a top-level corporate secret that hasn't been released to the public yet. If we can find proof that team leader Han leaked them to a competitor, that's a serious crime. Not just grounds for dismissal, but for a corporate espionage lawsuit. Our TK Group task force has been at it for weeks. But there's a limit to what outsiders can do without knowing the company's internal workings. We need an expert who knows Insung Group's projects and internal culture better than anyone. Someone like you. I apologize for my belated introduction. I am Kang Ji-hoon, chairman of the TK Group. Seo-yeon wavered. The anger and betrayal she felt toward Ji-hoon still simmered inside her. But his words tugged at her conscience. Thousands of colleagues. The projects she had poured her passion into. She couldn't just stand by and watch everything fall apart because of her personal feelings. This was no longer just a problem between her and Ji-hoon. A heavy silence fell over the ballroom. Choi Min-jun stood frozen, his mouth agape, and the chairman of Unsung Group's face was ashen. As Ji-hoon led her out, Seo-yeon could feel the hundreds of astonished eyes on her back. What do I need to do? TK Group, the #1 conglomerate in South Korea, a giant empire that Unsung Group couldn't even compare to. The name made the boardroom fall silent as if water had been thrown over it. After a long silence, Seo-yeon finally spoke. Her voice was still cold, but it carried a sense of professional responsibility. A wicked smile spread across Min-jun's face. That's perfect. The evidence? How will we fabricate the evidence? And this is strictly a professional collaboration. Don't expect anything more. I have come here today for 2 reasons. First, to discuss the future of the Unsung Group. That's enough. In the next moment, everyone in the ballroom had to doubt their eyes. The mighty Chairman Yoon bowed a full 90 degrees to the young man in work clothes. A faint look of relief crossed Ji-hoon's face. He paused and turned his gaze to the frozen Min-jun. From that day on, the penthouse living room became a huge war room. Dozens of monitors and whiteboards were set up, and the TK Group's top elite task force worked 24/7 analyzing data. And at the center of it all was Seo-yeon. Leave that to me. It's not difficult to manipulate server access logs and plant traces on her personal computer. At first, the task force members looked at the young woman Ji-hoon had brought in with suspicion. But as Seo-yeon began to work, their suspicion quickly turned to admiration. She had a knack for finding traces of corruption that even the TK Group's accountants had missed in tens of thousands of pages of financial statements and blueprints. And second, to clear my wife's name. This project is suspicious. The cost of materials is double the market price. And this subcontractor? There's a high possibility it's a paper company that only exists on paper. Kang Ji-hoon, an ordinary construction worker. Her husband. The shell surrounding his true identity had just cracked wide open. Please recheck the budget records of the Blue City project that was stopped 10 years ago. The project manager at the time was Director Choi's father. He probably used this project to launder slush funds. The air in the Unsung Group boardroom turned as cold as ice. The name Kang Ji-hoon, chairman of the TK Group, was heavy enough to suffocate everyone in the room. Unsung Group was a small corner shop in comparison to the TK Group, and the emperor of that vast empire was standing right in front of them. Seo-yeon's insights were razor sharp. With every instruction she gave, the dirty secrets of Unsung Group were peeled back, one by one. Ji-hoon watched her quietly as she worked late into the night, her eyes, which shone as she concentrated on her work, the small smile she gave when she solved a problem. He was rediscovering the woman he had fallen in love with. Their vile plan was set in motion without a hitch. A few days later, as Seo-yeon was immersed in her project as usual, a team of auditors stormed into her office. They began to spend more nights working together. When they got tired of wrestling with complex data, they would quietly make each other coffee. Most of their conversations were still work-related, but in the process, they started to see each other in a new light. Seo-yeon learned that Ji-hoon was not just a rich heir, but a responsible leader who fought to set things right. Ji-hoon, too, felt a deep respect for Seo-yeon's exceptional abilities and strong sense of justice. Choi Min-jun's legs gave out, and he almost fell. His mind went completely blank. The construction worker, the rooftop room, the work clothes, everything he had scorned and mocked turned into sharp fragments, piercing his heart. In that moment, he realized just how foolish and pathetic he was. Then, one early morning, Seo-yeon finally found the crucial piece of evidence. It was an early version of the Mountain View project blueprints, a version that Director Choi had managed himself before giving it to her. I just came out for some fresh air. I found it. Meanwhile, Seo-yeon, alone in the rooftop room, was passing the time in excruciating anxiety. Ji-hoon had said he would take care of everything, but how What could he possibly do? Her mind was filled with negative thoughts. What if he got hurt standing up to Minjun? What if he got into trouble because of her? At Seo-yeon's cry, Ji-hoon and the team members, who had been dozing, rushed to the monitor. Team leader Han Seo-yeon, we need you to come with us. An emergency audit is underway on suspicion of leaking corporate secrets. Look at this. These are phantom processes that only exist in the initial blueprints. They padded the construction costs by including construction items that would never actually happen. And the difference was siphoned off. And that money went to offshore shell corporations owned by Director Choi and key members of the board. Then, her phone began to ring non-stop. Colleagues from work, and even friends she hadn't spoken to in a long time. Everyone was calling her as if on cue. Seo-yeon didn't have the courage to answer. A moment later, a breaking news alert popped up. It was the smoking gun they had been looking for, the very heart of the corruption network. The massive rot that had been plaguing Yunsung Group for years was finally exposed. In the wake of the shocking incident at the gala, Yunsung Group was embroiled in an invisible storm. The rumor that the unidentified man to whom Daeyoung Group's chairman Yoon had bowed was team leader Han Seo-yeon's husband spread like wildfire. People could no longer ignore Seo-yeon. All sorts of speculation about her background ran rampant, and their attitude towards her became not just cautious, but even respectful. In her excitement, Seo-yeon instinctively looked at Ji-hoon, who was standing beside her. He was looking back at her with the same fiery gaze. Their eyes met in the air. In that moment, the cold wall of professional partnership broke down, and the feelings of the two people who had shared warmth in the rooftop room resurfaced. The ice of anger in Seo-yeon's eyes began to melt in his warm gaze. Breaking news: TK Group announces hostile takeover of Yunsung Group. Chairman Kang Ji-hoon appears at board meeting. The day of the emergency shareholders meeting dawned. The meeting was bound to be a battlefield of debates over the TK Group's acquisition and an outpouring of outrage over the Choi family's corruption. The air was thick with tension, and the room was packed with reporters and shareholders. What leaking secrets? What are you talking about? After Director Choi and his allies were arrested, the remaining Yunsung Group executives desperately tried to hold on to the company's management rights. They spun the Choi family's corruption as an isolated incident and framed the TK Group's takeover as an act of greed by a corporate raider. Their last hope was to win the proxy battle by swaying the small shareholders at the meeting. Seo-yeon couldn't believe her eyes. She clicked on the article, and the screen filled with a familiar face. A man in a high-end suit was giving a briefing in front of a throng of reporters. It was Kang Ji-hoon. The man in the picture was no longer the quiet construction worker she knew. His cold charisma overwhelmed everyone, and his eyes held the confidence of a man who owned the world. He was the very picture of a titan. In the front row, Kang Ji-hoon sat as the representative of the TK Group, and Seo-yeon sat beside him as a key witness and advisor to the Yunsung Group's normalization task force. Seo-yeon looked determined, no longer afraid. Instead, her eyes held a resolute will to end everything with her own hands. Ji-hoon quietly took her hand under the table. The warmth gave her courage. Minjun's words were cut short. A huge commotion erupted at the entrance to the ballroom. Everyone turned to see the living legend of South Korean business, Chairman Yoon of Daeyoung Group, enter the room. He was a magnate so powerful even the Yunsung Group chairman had to bow to him respectfully. The meeting began, and as expected, the vice chairman, a close associate of Director Choi, took the podium and began an emotional speech. Seo-yeon dropped her phone. All the strength drained from her body. TK Group chairman, Kang Ji-hoon, her husband. All the puzzle pieces fell into place at once. His extensive knowledge, his sharp insights, the mysterious phone calls, and Chairman Yoon of Daeyoung Group's respectful demeanor. Everything made sense. Respected shareholders, our Yunsung Group is a company with a 40-year legacy that has overcome countless crises. We deeply apologize for the recent unfortunate events, but we cannot hand over a company built on our blood and sweat to a raider because of the actions of a few individuals. Seo-yeon, completely clueless, was dragged to the audit office. The investigation room was cold and quiet. Choi Min-jun, the legal director, and several other executives sat across from her with grave expressions. His inflammatory speech swayed some of the shareholders. Shouts of "TK Group, get out!" erupted. The momentum seemed to be shifting in favor of Yunsung Group's existing management. But with understanding came a tremendous sense of betrayal. He had lied to her from the very beginning. Their marriage, their life together, had it all been a play orchestrated by him? Had she been nothing more than a fool in his little drama? The feelings she had begun to harbor for him were now overshadowed by rage and a deep sense of being deceived. Just then, Ji-hoon stood up and requested to speak. All eyes turned to him. But in the eye of the storm, Choi Min-jun felt nothing but the deepest humiliation and sense of crisis of his life. Not only had the woman he had scorned and cast aside risen beyond his reach, but her husband's identity was threatening him. He stayed up all night, digging into Ji-hoon's background, but all he found was the meager profile of a day laborer. But Chairman Yoon's behavior proved that was a lie. I would like to correct the term raider. We at the TK Group are not here to loot the Unsung Group, but to cut out the rotten parts and restore it to a healthy corporation. At that very moment, in the boardroom, Kang Ji-hoon's one-sided assault was in full swing. Ji-hoon's calm but powerful voice commanded the room. The legal director laid out the fabricated evidence one by one. On the table, a record of emails sent to a competitor from Seo-yeon's PC. A large sum of money deposited into her bank account, and abnormal access logs on the server. All the evidence perfectly pointed to her as the culprit. And I would like to show you all today whether those rotten parts were just a few individuals. I'd like to ask our advisor, Ms. Han Seo-yeon, to step forward. Who is the one who framed my wife, team leader Han Seo-yeon, as an industrial spy? At Ji-hoon's introduction, Seo-yeon walked to the podium. When she stood in front of the screen, the room stirred again. The tragic heroine who had been abandoned by Choi Min-jun and framed as an industrial spy. Everyone held their breath, waiting to hear what she had to say. Oh, if you had given me a call, I would have been honored to escort you myself. Am I interrupting something? I was an employee of Unsung Group just like you, and I love this company more than anyone. But the truth I uncovered was devastating. Ji-hoon's voice was low, but the fury behind it seemed to lower the temperature of the room by several degrees. No one dared to open their mouth. Seo-yeon took a deep breath and projected the documents she had analyzed all night onto the screen. From the manipulated Mountain View project blueprints to the flow of slush funds into dozens of shell corporations, and the process of that money being funneled into the offshore accounts of Director Choi and other key board members. Everything was laid bare. This is all a lie. I didn't do any of this. This is not simple embezzlement. Over the last 10 years, they have siphoned off more than 500 billion won from this company. Your precious investments and the sweat of your employees were disguised as their luxurious lifestyles and slush funds. The lawyer standing behind Ji-hoon stepped forward and threw a stack of documents onto the table. Seo-yeon's presentation was like a crime film. She explained the complex accounting data and money trails in a way that anyone could understand, and her logic was flawless. The faces of the vice chairman and the other executives turned whiter by the minute. Who in the world is he, Han Seo-yeon? How dare you do this to me? At the end of her presentation, Seo-yeon put the documents that Choi Min-jun had used to frame her as an industrial spy and her stolen blueprints side by side on the screen. This is the original data recovered from team leader Han Seo-yeon's PC and the server logs. The records show that data was manipulated by unauthorized access from the IP addresses of the technical and legal directors' offices. And this is the evidence they tried to use to pin all the blame on me. Director Choi stole my ideas to get a contract with an overseas partner, but he failed due to a lack of understanding of the core technology. If they truly cared about this company, they would not have done something so foolish and tarnished its reputation. Seo-yeon desperately tried to argue, but no one believed her. Min-jun seized the opportunity to corner her. When Seo-yeon's presentation ended, a heavy silence fell over the meeting room. And then a massive roar of anger erupted from the shareholders. The faces of the technical and legal directors went white. Scammers, give us our money back. Seo-yeon couldn't believe her ears. She slowly raised her head to look at him. His face was still expressionless, but a resolve was now visible in his deep eyes. The situation had been completely reversed. The vice chairman was sweating profusely and couldn't say a word. Chairman, what brings you here? When everything was settled, Ji-hoon took the microphone again. Furthermore, our investigation into the money deposited into team leader Han's account revealed it came from a shell corporation managed by Director Choi Min-jun. This is a clear case of obstruction of justice and defamation. Respected shareholders, the truth is, as I've presented, the choice is now yours. Will you continue to entrust the future of this company to a corrupt management team, or will you work with the TK Group to create a transparent and new Yunsung Group? Don't even try to deny it now, Han Seo-yeon. The evidence that you betrayed the company for money is right here. I'll have you suspended by the board, and you will be held civilly and criminally responsible for the damages you've caused. There was no need for further debate. In the vote that followed, the motion to acquire Yunsung Group was passed with an overwhelming majority. It was over. Minjun had no excuse, no way out. He looked at his father with trembling hands, but his father just stared at the ground, saying nothing. Just as everything concluded, the back door of the meeting room opened, and prosecutors and investigators came in. They went straight to the executives' table and put cold handcuffs on the vice chairman and the others involved in the corruption. The cheers of the shareholders celebrating their victory and the screams of the disgraced executives filled the room. His anxiety soon morphed into a vile rage and a desire for revenge. He would not be broken like this. He had to bring Han Seo-yeon to her knees again. He felt he wouldn't be satisfied until he took everything from her and utterly crushed her so she could never rise again. In the middle of all the chaos, Seo-yeon and Ji-hoon looked at each other. Hot tears welled up in Seo-yeon's eyes. They were no longer tears of sadness or anger. They were tears of overwhelming emotion for having brought justice to light and gratitude for the man who had walked this path with her. Ji-hoon walked over to Min-jun and whispered in his ear, his voice as cold as ice. Ji-hoon gently wiped her tears with a soft smile. Her world collapsed once again. Tears streamed down her face from the unfairness and betrayal. She realized she had fallen into a huge trap, but her pleas were useless. There was no one on her side. You did well, Ms. Han Seo-yeon. You dared to touch my woman. You will pay for what you did. Your father. And everything you have, it will all be taken from you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No. Please, carry on with your business. The titles were still awkward, but they now held a warmth and trust that hadn't been there before. In the ruins of a collapsed empire, the two of them were taking their first step as true partners. That afternoon, Choi Min-jun and his father, along with their key men, were arrested. Yunsung Group was completely taken over by the TK Group. The South Korean business world was in shock at the unprecedented shakeup. After the storm of the shareholders' meeting had passed, the business world was abuzz with the news of the TK Group's acquisition of Yunsung Group. However, a strange calm fell over Seo-yeon and Ji-hoon's penthouse. The frantic time they had spent working toward a common goal was over, and an awkward silence returned between them. The corruption of Yunsung Group was exposed, and justice had been served. But their relationship was still in a state of flux, barely able to leave the audit room. Seo-yeon returned to her rooftop room and collapsed on the floor, sobbing. She thought it was all over. Her career, her reputation. Everything was on the line. At that moment, only one person came to mind, Kang Ji-hoon. With trembling hands, she picked up her phone and called him. As promised, Ji-hoon began a major restructuring of Yunsung Group. The corrupt executives were all fired and replaced with talented people from the TK Group. And at the center of this reform, he placed Han Seo-yeon. After the storm passed, Ji-hoon returned to the rooftop room that evening. The moment he opened the door, he was met by Seo-yeon, who stood in the middle of the living room with a cold expression. There were no tears or sorrow in her eyes, only cold anger and deep hurt. I plan to establish an independent architectural design center within Yunsung Group. Choi Min-jun secretly summoned his key men, the head of the technical team and the legal team. His office was filled with the air of greed and conspiracy. Ji-hoon said carefully to Seo-yeon one evening, "Did you have fun? Mr. Chairman, I would like to offer you the position of center director. Ms. Han Seo-yeon. This is not an order from a chairman, but a proposal from a partner who believes in your abilities. I promise you full authority and support to unleash your talent." Hello. Seo-yeon was silent for a moment. The title of the chairman's wife felt like a heavy burden, but at the same time, her heart pounded. The chance to put her name on a project and spread her own design philosophy, it was the stage every architect dreams of. Seo-yeon said sarcastically. The word chairman was laced with sharp contempt. "I'll do it, but on one condition." He stopped directly in front of Kang Ji-hoon. "Anything you ask. Did you enjoy your little show, fooling an ordinary woman and pretending to be a poor laborer? Please don't treat me as madam or the chairman's wife. Just call me Director Han Seo-yeon. I want us to clearly separate our personal and professional lives. Hearing his calm voice on the other end, the sobs she had been holding back erupted again. Her firm words brought a bitter smile to Ji-hoon's face, but he nodded anyway. Ji-hoon looked at her in silence. His face was a mixture of fatigue and regret. The newly launched Yunsung TK Design Center quickly found stability under Seo-yeon's leadership. She treated her former colleagues fairly and built her team based solely on merit. Under her leadership, the employees regained their vitality, and the center began to produce innovative designs. The Mountain View project, which she oversaw, won the Korean Architectural Award, solidifying Han Seo-yeon's name in the industry. I need a way to bring Han Seo-yeon down, a surefire way, one she can't recover from. Despite her complete success at work, Seo-yeon's heart still felt empty. The life in the luxurious penthouse was unfamiliar and uncomfortable. She missed the clumsy kimchi stew Ji-hoon made more than the food of the top chef. And she missed the sight of him sleeping curled up on the old sofa more than the wide, cold bed. She began to realize that what she missed wasn't the life of poverty, but the genuine warmth she had felt in it. She hated the TK Group chairman who had deceived her. But the construction worker Kang Ji-hoon, who had quietly stood by her side, was already deeply rooted in her heart. Seo-yeon, please, let me explain. Ji-hoon felt the same way. As chairman, he had everything. But when he returned home, he was met with an empty loneliness. He was proud of Seo-yeon's success from a distance, but his heart ached from the distance between them. He respected her wishes and kept his distance. But every night, he would wait on the living room sofa until the light in her study went out, just like he had in the rooftop room. Ji-hoon, what do I do? And they said, I betrayed the company, that I'm a spy. One late night, Seo-yeon came out of her study and found Ji-hoon asleep on the sofa. A worn notebook lay on his lap. Curiosity led her to pick up the notebook, and her hands trembled. It was his work journal from his time at the construction site, but also his diary. Explain what more is there to hear? That you are the richest man in South Korea, that you can save or ruin a woman like me with a single snap of your fingers. Today, I met a woman crying in the rain. Her face looked like she carried all the sadness in the world. When she asked me to marry her, my heart stopped. Could this be fate? Ji-hoon patted Chairman Yoon on the shoulder, then took Seo-yeon's hand. Seo-yeon smiled today. She smiled for the first time while eating my terrible stew. I feel like I would do anything to protect that smile. Seo-yeon's voice rose. She's struggling because of Choi Min-jun. I want to tell her everything and make him kneel before her. But I'm afraid she'll leave me, because she trusts Kang Ji-hoon, not the TK Group chairman. Seo-yeon babbled incoherently, explaining everything. Ji-hoon listened to her without a word. When her sobs subsided, he spoke in a low voice. His tone was surprisingly calm and cold. The notebook was filled with his true feelings and struggles for her. She was crying without even realizing it. She finally understood that he hadn't lied to her. He had been afraid of losing her. Do you know how pathetic I felt? I thought you were a real construction worker. And I even worried about your future. Did you just stand by and mock me the whole time? Seo-yeon quietly brought a blanket and covered his sleeping body. Then she went to the kitchen and prepared 2 cups of warm tea. A moment later, Ji-hoon opened his eyes and was surprised to see Seo-yeon sitting in front of him, looking at him with warm eyes. The head of the legal team spoke cautiously. Sir, team leader Han has the chairman's full trust, and she's a key figure in the Mountain View project. Meddling with her could backfire. You're awake. Let's have some tea. No, that's not it at all. Her voice was no longer cold. Ji-hoon, bewildered, took the cup she offered. Don't worry. Nothing will happen. Just wait at home. I'll take care of everything. I'm sorry. Ji-hoon raised his voice for the first time. He tried to approach her and grab her shoulders, but Seo-yeon roughly pushed his hands away. Seo-yeon spoke first. Chairman Yoon's voice held not just respect, but awe. I misunderstood you. I was so focused on my own hurt that I couldn't see your sincerity. Don't touch me. I don't want to believe a single word you say anymore. No, I'm the one who's sorry. I wasn't honest from the beginning. It was I who couldn't trust you. His voice was filled with unshakable confidence. Seo-yeon had no choice but to believe him. The two of them talked for a long time, sharing what they had held in their hearts. Misunderstandings were cleared, and wounds began to heal. They had started with an impulsive one-night promise, but through countless hardships, they had built a solid foundation of trust and love. Please listen to me. Seo-yeon. 1 year later, a completion party was held for the Mountain View Palace, a building that had changed the Seoul skyline. At the party, attended by all of South Korea's VVIPs, the most radiant person was the lead designer, Han Seo-yeon. Then use your brain, you idiot. Find some dirt on her and get rid of her. After the party, Seo-yeon and Ji-hoon stood alone on the observation deck on the top floor. The night view of Seoul unfolded below them like a field of jewels. For the first time, he called her name gently, but even that tenderness felt like a calculated performance to Seo-yeon. Do you regret it? The next morning, Yoon-sung Group was in an uproar. An emergency board meeting had been called. Choi Min-jun and his father were ecstatic, planning to get Seo-yeon's dismissal approved and completely ruin her. Ji-hoon asked in a low voice, wrapping his arm around Seo-yeon's shoulder. Do you know why I hid my identity? I was tired of people who only came to me for my money and status. I wanted to find someone who would see the real me, someone who would genuinely laugh beside me. I was investigating corruption at a construction site when I met you, crying in the rain. Regret what? Let's go. The food here isn't very good. Marrying a construction worker on a whim? His voice was filled with sincerity. Seo-yeon leaned into his embrace and smiled brightly. She tilted her head up and kissed him briefly on the lips. As the meeting was about to begin, a line of black sedans pulled up in front of the Yoon-sung Group's headquarters, a scene straight out of a movie. The car doors opened, and a man in a perfectly tailored, high-end suit emerged. It was Kang Ji-hoon, who had been in mud-stained work clothes just the day before. He was followed by a group of sharp-looking secretaries and lawyers. It was the best decision of my life. Honey, when you asked me to marry you, I thought it was fate. In your despair, I saw a sincerity I had never seen in any other woman. Our time in that rooftop room, the rough kimchi stew, every moment was the happiest time of my life. I didn't lie to you. I just missed the right moment to show you the real me. In the cold night air, the two of them held on to each other's warmth, looking down at the sparkling city. Their miraculous love, which had begun in the depths of despair, was just beginning. Min-jun snapped impatiently. The technical director's eyes gleamed with a cunning light. Ji-hoon poured out his heart, but Seo-yeon's mind was already closed. The man she had started to fall in love with was the quiet and warm Kang Ji-hoon, not the chairman of a giant corporation who had everything. His appearance captivated everyone in the lobby. The employees who had seen him at the gala were in shock. An overwhelming charisma and gravitas emanated from him. Nothing like a normal laborer. I need time. Everything is so confusing. Who you are, and what my feelings are. Chairman Yoon barely acknowledged the greetings and his eyes widened as if he'd spotted something. He pushed past his entourage and walked purposefully through the crowd. Seo-yeon turned away coldly. The relationship, which had started so impulsively, now felt like a mirage built on a lie. Their marriage had entered a completely new phase. With all the truths revealed, they were no longer master and servant, savior and saved. They were now on a trial to face each other's wounds and sincerity as true partners.